Center. Uh, Thank you, Kizzy. Um, Today we have Kizzy Jones, author of some awesome books about dachshunds, and her illustrator, Scott Ward. And I'm so thrilled that they're joining us today. They have some presentations for us. I believe we're going to have Kizzy read her book, one of her books to us. She has many. And Scott is going to share some doodling. And if you have any questions at all during the presentation, feel free to pop them into the chat function. It's down along the bottom of your screen. You'll be able to type anything you want. And then at the end, we'll have some time for people to ask questions out loud. But first, we'll give.
Okay, I think Annie may have frozen.
And I'll be happy to answer any of your questions. During the presentation, I would request that you keep yourself muted so that our author and illustrator today can have clean presentations and not feel overwhelmed by other noise. And I will be keeping myself muted as well. If you need anything, please let me know. And here we go, Kizzy, Scott, welcome.
Thank you, Annie. We are delighted to receive your invitation. Thank you for hosting us today. And thank you, Scott. I know you have a very busy schedule. Thank you for being with us and sharing your gifts. So I have been in love with dachshunds since I was 18 months old, and our family bought our very first dachshund, Dagwood, in Munich, Germany. And here I am. I'm about 3 years old, and with Dagwood, he was a long-haired, standard red dachshund, and he was my buddy, absolutely. So it should come to no surprise to anyone who knows me well that my very first Tall Tale children's book would be about dachshunds, how dachshunds came to be. And in this story, you've got a very lonely little girl who longs for companion. And by the power of love and magic, dachshunds come to be. And then the second book, I was down in Mexico and oh, I was enamored with pelicans. Those big, long beaks and how they would glide along the ocean. I thought, oh, I love these birds. How can I possibly put pelicans and dachshunds together? Well, Goldie, this dachshund thinks that they look just alike and they can be best friends. And it's Pelican who says, oh, no, 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 no. But you know, even though we're not alike, we can still become friends. So we have our second tall tale about dachshund and a pelican. Now the third tall tale is a little bit different twist. Yes, there are dachshunds. In fact, there are 11 dachshunds in this book. And, you know, over the years, I published the first tall tale in 2012 and Pelican in 2016. And all my friends were very supportive and, oh, gee, that's great. And we know Kizzy loves dachshunds, but what about all the other dogs? When are you going to acknowledge and celebrate other dogs, our dogs? And that's how Tall Tale 3 came to be, is that I thought, oh, I need to think of my friends and their wonderful dogs. So most of the dogs that are in here, I know someone who's had a dog like this, and it was a way to celebrate their pups. And two things I want to mention in here is that I love the Oregon coast, the Pacific Northwest, the Washington and Oregon coast. And I was very active with Cape Perpetua and the National Forest Service. And when I was visiting, I would see all the different foliage, and it was fascinating. And I was able to work with a couple of botanists to get to know about the foliage. So with the, working the collaboration with the botanists and learning about the vegetation, wanting to add on new dogs, all of this came together for a Tall Tale About Dachshunds and Costumes, How More Dogs Came to Be. So we're going to read this book together. And I want to mention two things. So Scott was very intentional about making sure that on every page, there's one little dachshund that's looking right at the reader. So as we go through the book, look at each page, and if you see and notice the little dachshund that's peeking at you. And the second thing is we talk about dachshunds and the little girl dressing up in grasses and fir boughs and so forth. But these are all that are down on the ground that were damaged in a storm. We would never want to go out to good, healthy plants and tear them apart. So we want to keep that in mind. So give me 1 minute to pull up the story, and we're going to read the third tall tale together. Let's see. So let's share the screen. So do we see the cover of the tall tale? Yes, wonderful. All right, then I'm going to minimize my pictures here. And let's read together. Lots of praise for dachshunds and costumes, and here we are. A tall tale about dachshunds and costumes, how more dogs came to be, and illustrated by fabulous and creative Scott Ward. I am indebted to you forever for these darling and creative illustrations. He took the words and brought them to life. Here we go. 'Twas once long ago by a magical sea, a girl and her dachshund friends loved to run free. On the beach they'd explore, they would jump and they would play. They happily romped until one autumn day. Now, do you see a little dachshund peeking at you? Look at here, little wire hair. The sky grew so dark and the wind blew so strong. Under clouds threatening rain, the dogs hurried along. But the rain couldn't wait even 1 minute more, for the clouds opened up and it started to pour. They ran for the warmth of their safe bungalow. To our home, to our home, to our home we will go. Look at this little black and tan pup on the couch peeking out at you. The wind thrashed the tree boughs up hillsides and down. The wind stirred up whitecaps and surf in the sound. Now safely at home, they looked out at the storm. Now safely at home, they slept through the storm. They woke to the sunshine so bright and so warm. Let's clean up the mess made by yesterday's storm. And look at this happy pup on the right-hand corner, right next to the little girl. This little pup's giving you a great big smile. Having raked up some grasses, the girl was outside. Look here, I'm a scarecrow, she joyfully cried. With gusto, the dogs barked. What fun that would be. We'll dress up in costumes. Let's use what we see. In the woods near the shore, they found branches galore, making stilts to be taller than ever before. The dachshunds on stilts spied the dogs on the ground with their costumes of greenery wrapped all around. Then quickly the dapple a costume had found. Bits of cauliflower mushrooms were wreathed all around. At the park, eager dogs leaped a maple leaf pile, jumped a maple leaf pile. A red dachshund and leaves made the little girl smile. With sprinkles of chanterelle mushrooms arranged, The eyebrows and coat of the brindle had changed. A piebald wore white, curly, everlasting flowers. To add a nice touch, she uncovered her face with a nosegay she made from some fine Queen Anne's lace. A black and tan short hair ate wild fruit with glee while he romped through huckleberries down by the sea. Near the shore played a dachshund, a silver and gray, sporting sedges and grasses, a lavish display. A cream long-haired dachshund had not needed help to play on the seashore and dress up in kelp. As they headed home, a wired hair with blonde locks adorned them with lichen that grew on the rocks. At home, the dogs asked the kind girl what she thought. If we stay in our costumes, would you be distraught? Then she wondered and questioned, would you still be you? Would you have to change on the inside then too? Now look at here, all the dogs in all their different costumes. Look at there. And even here we've got a pup. It's on the left-hand side. A pup's looking right at us. After pausing to think, the dogs wisely replied, we'd be changed and transformed. We'd be different outside. Yet inside our hearts are still caring and kind. Our nature remains, for we are so inclined. As she looked out the window at waves on the shore, the dogs in their costumes heard her implore, can you help, my dear friends? Oh, you magical sea. Can you help them become the dogs they want to be? In deep sleep that night, the little girl's plea was then heard. The answer to the dreams of the dachshunds occurred. The magical sea and love's power held sway. Yes, their hope was affirmed to stay dressed up that way. At sunrise, the changes were at last complete. The dogs were transformed. What a wonderful feat. The new dogs strolled everywhere, uphill and down, through all of the street of their marvelous town. While eating her strudel, a woman looked up. She said, I'll name you Poodle. You're such a fine pup. A family was playing and threw out a ball. One dog brought it back from where she saw it fall. A retriever, pure gold. The kids were so polite. Can we keep her as ours every day, every night? A shopkeeper looked at a perky-faced hound. Your name will be Schnauzer. You'll greet all around. You'll star in my blog, said a writer in haste. I'll name you French Bulldog. What a cute little face. A man with low vision found what he'd longed for. Your name's Labrador. Come, you can help me explore. A young girl in 4-H was walking about. She spied a great dog and then gave a loud shout. You'll win a blue ribbon at next year's state fair. I'll name you Afghan Hound. You've such beautiful hair. A rancher exclaimed, "Golly, you would I keep as my border collie. Please come herd my sheep." A truck driver hauling some freight across the land said, "I'll name you Yorkie. Good buddy, you're grand." The girl then walked home with the dogs that remained. 3 dachshunds had stayed. What memories they'd gained. And even here, you got the little fellow looking right out at us. The sea did its magic. The girl was so thrilled. Would the dogs change too much? All her worries were stilled. 'Twas the wisdom she heard from the dogs at the start. No matter their color, their shape, or their size, it is love that resides in each creature's heart. The end. And I'm still so stunned every time I see this beautiful silhouette that Scott created for the closing of this book. Each tall tale closed with a silhouette, but this was by far the most challenging, as you have the little girl, 8 new dogs, and 3 dachshunds to include. Just brilliant, Scott.
Thanks, Kizzy.
Now, the book has a very unique closing in that it ends with 3 glossaries. And the first glossary is about dachshunds, and it tells about the short hair, long hair, wire hair, and also the markings. And when I go back to not sharing the screen, I'll have to show you my little Josie, who was featured in Dachshund and Pelican. She was a brindle. And that's where there's a shading. You've got a basic color, but then you have a shading over it. I had never heard that word before. So I wanted to have all these different terms so that after you hear the story and the rhythm of the poetry, you can go back and learn about the different terms, brindle, dapple, piebald, and also the different colors. And then, of course, we have to have a glossary of the 8 new dogs. A lot of new dogs maybe that people don't know, or maybe your very favorite is here. And then the vegetation glossary, the unique foliage that's found here in the Pacific Northwest. Many people maybe know about the maple leaves or the Queen's Anne's lace, but maybe the pearly everlasting flowers or the evergreen huckleberry aren't as familiar. And the sloe sedge, the kelp, wax paper lichen. So you can get to know these different terms a little bit better. And of course, I've got the extra little note saying that the dachshunds and the little girls dressed up in foliage that have been damaged in the storm. So we never want to damage a living good plant. And then here you see me with 3 dachshunds. I had gotten some dried flowers, dried and plastic flowers from a shop and dressed them all up. Here's little Lacey with the mosses and lichen. And here's little Josie with the sloe sedge. And Buster's got Queen Anne lace for a crown. It's a lot of fun. They didn't appreciate it, but I thought they were darling. And our wonderful illustrator, Scott Ward. And Scott has been truly the lifeblood of this project, starting way back in 2011, and has just carried us through in such a successful and enjoyable project. So I will turn this over now to Scott. Oh, I'm going to point out this end paper. Scott, again, was so creative in having the dogs, all the dogs and the dachshunds floating around on the end papers. Very cute. So I'll stop sharing now. There we are. And Scott, what do you have for us today?
Thanks, Kizzy. So as Kizzy said, this was the 3rd book we worked on together. The idea of the dogs in costumes, however, came really early. Like it was shortly after the first book, I think, and we were talking about it. And I have to say that I was very excited about it. I kept asking, when's the costume book coming? And then she stuck a second book in between. But I was still like really excited about the costume book because I saw the potential of how creative the illustrations could be. And this book for me was um, challenging in the best way possible, in that, first of all, I had to learn what each different kind of dachshund looked like, and then how I was going to create those. And then it was also learning all of the flora from the sea to make sure that I was able to represent that. And in both cases, it was, can I represent these in a way that honors what they really look like and still make it artistic in my style? And that was fun for me to figure out how to do that. And of course, there's back and forth talking with Kizzy, and she was great in sending me samples or giving me samples of all of the of the plants that she had found, the lichens. So I actually had them in hand to look at. And I mean, that part was really fun. And then just to put it together and kind of think, how do I give each one of these little dachshunds a personality? And so I have to say, when you look at the illustrations, and I'm so grateful for you reading it now, because it's been a while since I've looked at the book, and it was really fun to like watch it unfold. And I was curious to see what the next illustration was myself, even though I did it. But I have to say, I think my favorite illustrations are the ones where all the little dachshunds are together. And, when they come in from the storm and they're all kind of drying off, it was fun for me to like give them each a different approach to how they would be drying off their little bodies and getting comfortable back at home. And the same thing then, when they fall asleep at night, they all find their own little place to fall asleep on the sofa. And for me, that was just kind of a fun thing to say, okay, what's the piebald going to do? What's his personality or her personality going to do? So that was a lot of fun for me. I think just all in all, having that many different characters and trying to carry them through is an interesting concept. And then to have, if you look at the book, the 3 dogs that she starts with just kind of disappear in the middle of the book, and then they reappear again at the end, which is an interesting thing. I always envisioned that they're off to the side just watching the whole story unfold, kind of like we are hearing it. So maybe the little dachshunds that are looking out are actually looking at the 3 dachshunds that are listening to the story, and not just us. So yeah, I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, thanks, Kizzy.
Thank you. The other challenge you had is that as a dog took on the vegetation, which dog is it going to become? You have to keep ever in your mind that you've chosen a certain one because their coat lends itself to the new dog. Plus, you add the foliage, and you have to carry that through then. So that was a challenge.
That was a challenge. And yeah, you're so right. And I had a little chart. Like I made myself a little chart of what they were going to do and how it was going to be. And I think ultimately, as you read back the story, my all-time favorite illustration is the one where the shadows of the dogs anticipate the dogs that they're going to become. So it's a little foreshadowing. And in that illustration, the little girl has no shadow at all, right? Just the dogs have shadows, showing that's kind of this the magical piece of it's moving into the magical piece of things, I think, is where we kind of get a little idea of what those dogs are going to become. And I think that was just logistically trying to figure out, okay, the wire haired is going to become this, and how can I kind of build up to that point with it? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That was brilliant, actually. And I think that is the turning point of the story, where the reader says, oh, what's happening here? The dog, a dachshund, is not looking like a dachshund in the shadow. So yeah, that was brilliant.
It's kind of a subtle way, I think. And I wonder if people notice that right away. I don't know. I mean, it's what I see, because of course I did it, but yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I remember when you were doing Pelican and you were coloring one of the pages, you said, oh, this is my favorite page. Is then that your favorite page where you have the shadow, or is there another one that had another?
Well, it's funny because, you know, as you're reading the story, like when it first came to the dogs drying off, I thought, oh, that's my favorite illustration. And then you get to the dog sleeping, I thought, oh no, that's my favorite illustration. Then you get to the shadows and I think, oh no, that's my illustration. And then you get to the end with the heart silhouette and I think, no, no, that's it. And so it's nice to have that many kind of favorites. And I think that's probably one of the things I loved about this book, is that there was so much to play with, that it was easy to get. And I like that those are my favorites because they have personality in them, right? Just the picture itself is telling a little side story about the life of these dogs and the little girl. And so I think that that's the thing that makes them most exciting to me, is they're not just telling the story that's being told by the words, but it's also adding this other layer of understanding of who they are and how they are with each other.
Right. Yeah, there are many layers to this. Yeah, and your illustrations certainly lend it to that depth. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you have a little artistic project for us today?
Well, we'll see. Yes, we could try something. So Kizzy and I get to sign books, which is a fun thing for us to do. And especially when we get to do it in person and meet folks and talk with them about the books. And I realized early on when we started doing this in 2012 or whatever the first book came out, that Kizzy was writing these beautiful little messages in people's books because she's the author. And I thought, well, I can't do that. I can't compete with that. I got to do what I do. And so I started drawing little Dachshund doodles. So I'm going to draw a little Dachshund doodle for you, which is an easy little line drawing. And I think you'll be able to do it too. And so I'm going to see if I can do this so you can see it. Now my little paper here, it's going to be a little backwards for me. Let's see. Hold it up here. I don't know. I might have to do it step by step. So first, a line like that. Can you see that? There you go.
Got it?
Yeah. And then we're just going to add on to that line a little bump like that, but a little flat. And we're going to come down like that. You can see the head starting to form there. And then we're going to add a little ear. Cute. Then we're going to go back to the beginning of this line and we're going to bring it down. And then we're going to swing it out, bring it down. Oh, you can see that. That's great. Come up like that. You can see. Then we're going to go straight across, come down like that. Now we have a little.
Oh, got two little feet. Yeah.
Little feet. And now we're going to just add a little eye and a nose. And then I always put a little woof like that. Whoops.
Very cool.
There you go.
It's so darling.
Simple little doodle for you.
That's a wonderful thing. Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Scott.
Yeah, thanks, Kizzy.
Did we get a happy little tree with that?
Oh, I wanted to say, we have a dachshund here at our house, and so I'm surprised he hasn't come in yelling and saying, why do you, we have a schnauzer, sorry, you don't have a dachshund, we have a schnauzer. So I'm surprised my little schnauzer hasn't come in barking at me saying, why do you keep saying dachshund? Because it's not.
Yeah. And I almost interrupted the story to say, back when you saw the shopkeeper with the schnauzer that's current and furbished, and that's the store. It's co-owned by Scott and his husband, Cameron Vale, and their child, Dexter, right?
Dexter, the schnauzer.
And my nephew.
That's right.
So when you see that, yes. One other question, Scott, there's been a, how do you feel our collaboration has been with the drawings? When I give you the text, what happens after that point?
Yeah. And so, you know, when we did the first book, we were both a little bit uncertain about how it would go. And so we had a lot of communication and back and forth about it. And it was great because we were just trying to figure out how it worked. And so as each book came along, then it became a little easier because we knew what we were doing, right? And so the collaboration is Kizzy has written the story. and she gives me the story, and then I just sit on it for a little while and come up with some ideas about what images come to mind, and then we talk about what the layout of the book is, how many pages there are going to be, what each page is going to say, which helps me then come up with individual, very specific kind of illustrations. And I do just little thumbnail sketches, like little 2x2 inch, sketches, and then share them with Kizzy, and we go back and forth about what those are doing and if they're working or not. And then once we kind of get a rough idea of, yes, this looks like we're heading in the right direction, then I have created, I'm going to say, a full-size mock-up, right? It's just this sketch. And actually, Kizzy, I think you did the last time, the third book, you did that mock-up.
Yeah.
And so we get an idea of what it really feels like to hold the book and look at it and turn the pages, and what the illustrations are doing with the words. And then, there have been a couple of times when Kizzy has actually changed the wording of the book, sometimes because of the illustration, but sometimes because the rhythm of the book needs a little bit of an adjustment or something. And so, there's a little bit of back and forth, just kind of figuring out those things. And then once we get to that point, it's kind of like, okay, Scott, here you go, take it and run with it. And then, I spend several months coloring it all in, filling it all in, painting it. And then usually if I can get this illustration done a little earlier, we release it. So there's at least something out there that people can see that this book is coming. And it's actually been really great, because Kizzy has really given me all the creative freedom I could ever possibly dream of having, when in a collaborative sense, that it's been fun just to explore her ideas, right? These are Kizzy's ideas that I'm trying to bring her vision to life, and have at the same time have my own little spin on it. And it's been fantastic. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Two things is I could not even begin to imagine the creativity that Scott puts with these illustrations. I would have a stick figure of a little girl and a couple of stick figures dogs and a blue sky with a cloud, and say, it's Scott who has this amazing ability. And I'll give you an example. Do you remember when we went through the book where the different animals were with the different vegetations? So the dog's there and has some of the vegetation, and in the back, Scott has just the outline, the silhouette, and a soft hue of the vegetation. So we get a sense of it, but we're not overpowered with it. And, I couldn't have dreamed of doing that for anything. You're able to take it to a much deeper step. So not only are you talented in being able to draw something, but you have that extra creativity to make it come from a very unique perspective. That's what I think adds to these tall tales.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the fun part for me is, I know you, we've been friends for a long time. And so I know that there is great meaning behind these stories, that they're not just children's picture stories, but there's actually this sense of wanting to share what it means to be connected, and what it means to explore and honor the beauty in the world. That's what each one of these books does. And so it's important for me then, as your illustrator companion, to then say, okay, how can I support that? And so it really is like looking at the lichen and then saying, all right, we really have to honor this lichen, right? And how do we do that in a way that doesn't distract from the story, right? If I was to put lichen all over the place, then suddenly the dog is just, surrounded by lichen, and you have to kind of almost search for the dog in the costume. And it's so what then is in my mind, I'm thinking, how can I express the lichen without having it be an overwhelming, distracting element? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that was very, very clever. The other thing I want to take my hat off to Scott about is this book. There were a couple reasons that, yes, you're right. I was talking about this book right away at the beginning when I did my first book.
Yeah.
But there were a couple of variables. Number one, I had to find a way that there would be a reason for a parade for the dogs and to go out to their other lives. So, first I thought, well, we'll make it Halloween, right? Because they're going trick or treating. But then there was, and the fall, so the fall foliage. But that didn't quite work. And then, okay, I thought 4th of July, they're having a big picnic or whatever. And so I had to study all the summer foliage, right? And then I finally decided for the fall, the earlier autumn, not so late as October, but earlier. So I had to study that foliage.
Yeah.
And then the other issue is my first 2 books were written in a regular prose style.
Right.
And this book, when I wrote it in the regular prose style, I felt it was too laborious. We needed to find a way to make it lighter, flowing, moving. And so, we wanted rhyme, but then what rhyme? And it actually, I have my wonderful beloved Thomas to thank for this, but he made a chart for the rhyming for the 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, because that's a rhythm everyone knows and appreciates. And we took the story, and I think I had like 17 versions by then. And Thomas put it in a chart, and got the words. And even once we got that, it had to be refined over and over to get the rhythm right. And I think I probably drove you to distraction because I changed it a couple times, because I got one suggestion. Well, Kizzy, people are used to prose and now you're giving them poetry. They're, it's like expecting to have Agatha Christie and you've got Dr. Seuss, don't.
Right.
And so I went back, but it lost its sizzle. So I had to do it again. And so, I thank you for hanging in there with me.
Yes.
It just took a while to find just the right sizzle, the rhythm, the outlay and everything. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and I don't think it really, there may be just a couple of small tweaks to the illustrations because of the change in the prose, but I think it was just kind of waiting for it to fall into place. It's like,
Right.
okay, we can have it anytime now. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, should we open it up to some questions, or is there anything else that you wanted to say or comment on, Scott?
No, I think I'd love to hear
Okay.
questions.
All right.
I think we have a few, we have 2 questions.
Okay.
One from Sharon. Is there a way to get a copy of this presentation in order to forward it to someone unable to attend today? Kizzy, you'll want to work with Sharon on that since you're recording it onto your computer. I believe there is a way to email it.
Right. In fact, after I did that, I thought, should I put it on the cloud so I could put it on social media?
You might have the option to do that after we're done, after you stop recording. So Sharon, I would get in contact with Kizzy about that.
Okay. Well, before we end, be sure and tell me before I turn that off to make sure I do it correctly, so I can share it with people.
Give you an option to save to the cloud or to your computer.
They asked me that to begin with, and I said to my computer, and maybe I should.
I think you can still email it. Yeah.
From my computer.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay.
And then from Cindy, Kizzy, do you have input for the artwork, or does Scott have free range? And I think we kind of answered that, but I would say, yeah, go for it.
Did you want to add anything more, Scott, to that?
Well, yes, Kizzy definitely has input into the artwork, but like I said, she was really great about giving me creative license. And so, that initial step of doing the thumbnail sketches, that's when I would get the most feedback from Kizzy. Like, she'd say, could we see a little more of the little girl, or maybe there should be a little more sea life here, or whatever, her comments were. That's where I made sure that I was getting the images and the thoughts that she wanted into the illustrations. So yes, she did, of course, it's her book. And so yes, she did help guide the illustrations, but yeah.
But primarily it was Scott, because my creativity, mine was more factual. Like I had one fan who showed up to both of my book launches and also a pet expo. And she was so upset because I didn't have any puffins in my books. So I promised her, I said, I promise the 3rd book will have a puffin. But of course, it takes place in October, early fall, September, October. Puffins are not on the coast then. So Scott put it up on the mantelpiece. If you look at there it is. There's the puffin, so it's like, there it is. So little things like that. Or the whole idea to connect, what Scott said, connection is so important to me. So Scott made sure that on every page, you've got a little dachshund that's looking right out the reader. So the reader knows that they matter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I want to say Cindy Wilkie is a librarian in Tennessee.
Oh, that's
I am
fantastic.
thrilled, Cindy, to see you here. Cindy discovered how dachshunds came to be and sent it to a dachshund owner, Kimberly Metcalf in Texas, who has wonderful dachshunds, and they read how dachshunds came to be, and the library in Tennessee played that. And so dachshunds are all over the map. What can I say? They rule. And I do have Josie in my lap for a reason, actually. Do you remember earlier I mentioned about the term brindle? That I'd never heard that term before. And it was when I got Josie. So she's actually an English cream, and her basic coloring is like a soft green wheat color, but she has this shading through her that makes her a brindle English cream brindle. Uh, and it's very beautiful, and you'll see it on all the dogs. But anyway, I had to show off our little Josie. She turned 16 last week, so she's quite something. Yeah.
All right. Does anyone have any other questions for our author and illustrator today? You can type them into the chat or unmute and ask.
So I'll make a couple of comments then while we're waiting for people to type a question. First of all, Scott has, I've made a trip up to Fairhaven, Bellingham, and he was gracious enough to host me, and he signed his doodle in several of the costumes books, and they're at the Neverending Bookshop for just a couple more days, and then also at the Edmonds Bookshop. And so if you can't get there, contact them and they will mail it to you. Absolutely.
We've got a question from Kay that I thought Kizzy had covered, but I'll go ahead and ask it now. Scott, did you draw the illustrations in the order of the pages, or did you draw them out of order? And if so, what made you choose the next one to draw? So for some reason, I thought that had already been asked. Apologies, Kay.
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, the illustrations don't come to me in order because, I've known the concept of the book prior to any kind of formal of sitting down and doing sketches. And so as I think about the book, some of the illustrations just jump out at me automatically. Like it's easy to see, what the poodle is going to ultimately look like. So it's hard to say. I can't tell you which illustration popped up first, but I do know that I kind of jump through the book, and then once I have an idea of what all the illustrations look like, I personally go back and just tweak them a little bit so they make sense as they're unfolding. It's whether it's about the intimacy of the piece or just about the consistency of the piece, but yeah, the illustrations just come as I'm inspired. I can't, and there's no explanation for that. If you can figure out how you're inspired, then you've got the key to life.
Yeah.
Because it just kind of happens.
Yes. And I'm going to show you one more thing. This is the Dogs on Parade. It's a spread that's in the Dachshunds in costume. And Scott made a giclée of this picture. And it is in a free drawing. And I will mail it anywhere in the United States if you're not local. And if you either walk into Neverending Bookshop, there's a QR code you can go on, or also Edmonds Bookshop, or if you go onto my website page, kizzyjones.com, there's right at the beginning, right on the homepage, is a way to enter. And you can enter till 10 o'clock tonight, and then we'll take it down and put it in this tumbler thing tomorrow at 1 o'clock at Sound Style, the dress shop that was so wonderful to host the art of storytelling for the month of June. We'll have a drawing of the winner. So a couple of things still to take advantage of before this fabulous several weeks comes to a close. And I have to say, I'm looking at my cheeks. I went to the farmer's market this morning, and even though I put sunscreen on, it was not enough. It was shady and cool, but I got some sun. So I'm looking beet red here, but anyway.
All right, does anyone else have any questions they'd like to type in the chat or say out loud? Okay. Well, thank you everyone for coming today. Thank you, Kizzy and Scott. It was so lovely to have you both virtually. If there are more books in your future together, maybe we'll have an in-person event someday. But I thank you again for coming to our Zoom author event and illustrator event. And if you do decide that you have more questions for Kizzy, I've included her her website address in the chat, and I'll include the shop's email address as well, because I have a direct line to Kizzy. You may all have that as well. So you can contact me there also, or just stop into the store if you are local.
Thank you. It was so good of you to host us. It was a thrill. And Scott, thank you for all of time. Thank you for bringing these stories to life with your amazing illustrations and your friends. Thanks.
Thank you, Annie.
Thank you, Scott. All right. I hope the rest of you have a lovely, warm, sunny Saturday afternoon. And maybe I'll see you at the store if you're local. And if not, thanks for coming today.
Thank you for hosting. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you both. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.